It's How I Make Money with Andy Beadle. Our guest today is Brandon Linthicum. He is one of the owners of Tizzoni Wine Bar. TizzoniWineBar.com, Tizzone, winebar.com. If you can't spell wine bar, you have bigger problems than we can address in this podcast, so good luck. And I have personally known Brandon for a long, long time. We met through a wine club, if I recall, and which was a great group of people, and struck up a friendship. In the time that I have known him, Brandon has been a full-time teacher. He has written for ESPN online and been a baseball fanatic. Is that a right way to put it? Enthusiast? Where are you on the grade of baseball lunacy?
I am, fanatic, loser, guy who couldn't give it up. So I decided to coach for a while to try to live out my dreams as an adult. So yeah,
I like
a little
it.
bit of everything.
Yeah, there you go. A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, in the restaurant stuff, that's in the best economies, that's a hard gig. And right. I know you and I, our friendship really deepened over our shared love of food and wine, and really of those hospitality, I would call, experiences, right? We've been to and put on some amazing dinners for terrific groups of people. And for years and years, we had mutual friends in the industry. And then when you launched out at Tizzoni, it was, I think, to me, it was a very natural progression of just sort of, I knew what your interests were and what you were doing. But, you guys were fairly successful up in that Daleville market. And then, COVID hit, and wow, what a year that's been. So it would be great, I think, to tell people about what it was that took you out of a relatively stable, I would say, work environment. Right, teaching, once you get a full-time gig, that's relatively, you can kind of stay in that for a while. But what was it that sort of made you take the leap, and what was it that helped you kind of get started setting up this project?
I'd always had some kind of a second job in the restaurant industry. Even when I was in college, I bartended on the side. Then when our friend opened Pomegranate, I helped him get things started and worked getting the bar menu and stuff set there. And so I always had a foot in the door in the restaurant industry. And it was always just kind of a passion project. It was something that I was passionate about, I enjoyed. I found my artistic release in a kitchen. And, if we're going to drink high-end wines, I might as well eventually find some kind of way to make money off of it.
Right. And buy them at cost. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's if I can have a paycheck to go with it, I can rationalize my alcoholism.
Right. There you go. There you go. I like it.
So no, with teaching, I was teaching at two different high schools over the course of 7 years. But I always worked in somewhere in this restaurant group. I started at Town Center Tap House, bartending there a little bit, and as the primary owner there, Stephanie Rogel, decided that she wanted to branch into a wine bar. We just had a number of conversations and went deep into it, and she allowed me to design basically my wine list, let me do what I wanted the way I wanted. And so I got more and more invested, and it turned into, from a small weekend gig to, man, I'm really invested in this and I'm passionate about it. And the way the organization works and the way that she worked was very just different than any restaurant experience I've had before, any job experience I've had before, to be quite honest with you. So I found myself over the course, as I was moved from one high school to the next, and just wasn't real sure that's what I kept seeing myself doing. I became more and more just invested in this, both physically, emotionally, all the parts. I wanted to see this group grow so much more. And so the last year at James River High School is where I was teaching college level history courses and some journalism courses. And I just, kept looking at my paycheck and looking at my benefits and weighing things out. And I was like, this just doesn't make sense. What am I doing? Why am I wasting my time teaching? The things that were rewarding in teaching were, connections that you would make with people. And then I realized, man, I'm making better connections even at this point in the restaurant world. So why not make the change? So when I did make the change, I'm pleased with it. No one could predict what happened with COVID and all the extra challenges we've had, but it was, I'm going to make that decision 100 times out of 100.
Yeah. Well, I think too, and and where you guys were, which was that new Daleville Town Center development, was a real, and that was one of the first like live, play, work developments out in the county, out in Botetourt County, where you guys are near Roanoke, which, obviously that concept's been around everywhere else in the normal world, but you guys were really an anchor with the tap room for that space out there, and I think you developed a great rep, but Tazzoni is a completely different concept, and really, at least it seemed to me from the outside, really kind of was your baby from the start, right? I mean, it
was.
Yeah.
It's the group. So we have Tap House here and Tazzoni here, Sharky's in Radford, Sharky's in Blacksburg.
Okay.
And so Tap House is similar to the two Sharky's concepts.
Right.
It's burgers and wings and TV and lots of beers and cool beer lists. But really, this was the first delve into a little bit finer dining, into wine for sure. So it's a big change of the concepts. It's the same. We're big on systems and systems and training and systems on building your team. So we're able to keep that same across the board, but the concept itself for the restaurant was complete 180 from what we've done in other places. And it's almost kind of been, in weird ways, kind of a social experiment for Stephanie a little bit, in that's just seeing how differently people react or how different people are from one restaurant to the rest, both with guests coming in the restaurant and employees. And so it's been a learning experience for all of us in a variety of ways. But, it has been fun for me to have a playground to create things in a kitchen, or to pair coupons, or to order coupons, or just learn trends with things. And so you're talking about just that being the first live, work, play type of area. We're definitely the first wine bar out here.
Right. Oh yeah.
And learning how different trends are here compared to national wine trends or national sales trends. We had a summer where we sold Merlot was our most selling red wine. And I just still can't wrap my head.
It's heartbreaking,
around
but that's okay.
It feels very odd.
Okay. I'm gonna have to just take a moment.
Right. It was the strangest thing, and didn't matter what I put. It was just odd. We had a couple regular guests who loved it and who would tell everybody about how good our house Merlot was, and then they would sell it, and just word of mouth, it would just go. And it's like, what? Where are we? So it's fun.
And you guys really raised the bar for being a wine bar. There had not been, and there really aren't, to my knowledge, any successful wine bars in Roanoke proper. I mean, they're kind of getting there. You got Jolly Grape and stuff like that, who've now opened, but that was after you. And it was a concept, at least in our market, that didn't really take traction until you guys nailed it. And, I think a lot went into that. It was the selection, it was the space, it was your clientele. And I think what would be valuable for people, I always find being ancillary, all my kids worked in the food industry. I did. And so when we all sit around, like, we toss around the jargon because we all know what we're talking about. But it would be super helpful, I think, for people to hear from a professional. When you talk about a concept, when you say, because every successful restaurant has a concept. What does that mean in professional parlance? When you say, we've got a concept, here's the concept we developed. When you talk about that, unpack what that means so that people can understand that idea. Yeah.
So your concept and your reality don't often match. We had an early concept of what we knew we wanted to do wine, and we wanted to have a large wine list. And then we decided we wanted to have wood-fired kitchen and do old school Italian food. And now we have a wine bar where we sell more steaks and seafood than we do anything else. The food concept has changed drastically. The wine concept, now we've added a large whiskey list. Now we have a retail wine section. So the concept started as one thing, but as we learned, it grew. Something that we talk about here often. So one of the very first things you learn in culinary school is mise en place. Everything's in place.
Right.
And that's where you learn that in culinary school. You put everything in place. That's how you start your shift. That's a cool concept, not a reality.
Right.
Because what you learn here is that once you get going, nothing's in the place it's supposed to be. Your concept's not, your things aren't, there's a missing employee, Steve is hungover and he's not here for the day. Right. Nothing's in place the way it's supposed to be. And so it's all about how you adapt. So our concept's adapted, but literally every shift you have to learn, react, and adapt. And also that's a great concept for 2020 period. That's the restaurants that are still going
Yeah.
have adapted. The people that are still going have adapted. It's so concepts and realities are never the same. We had a cool concept and we grew and changed and developed. And so we have other concepts moving forward. We're looking forward at the corner of 4th and Albemarle downtown. We're going to have a new event space and a juice bar coffee shop.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just to hopefully have a new place where we can do some more of our wine dinners, our wine pairings, wine classes, because there's really not a place that does that downtown.
Right.
So we're hoping to, the concept of that has worked well here, and we're hoping we can do that in Roanoke as well. That's scheduled to be open in February.
Oof.
Post-apocalypse, let's see exactly how that's going to work.
Yeah, really.
So we'll see. But yeah, some of the concepts have worked, and some of them have changed drastically.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that when you watch a restaurant, and is particular to that business, I think a lot of people have an idea, and oh, I'm going to open a Fresh Mex along the lines of whatever, and then God love them or bless their hearts, as we say down here. They don't change, right? The decision is my concept is going to work. And if you don't like my concept, screw you. And I think one of the things that is the hallmark, at least to me, of people who are successful in this industry is they have an idea, they have a concept, they then let the market tell them what parts they like, what parts they don't. They then adjust what they're doing. Or sometimes, you hit lightning in the bottle and you're the thing, right? And then you become a destination and so on and so forth. Or you're fortunate enough, like around here, we've got Frankie's, which is kind of the only quote unquote steakhouse. And so they're just like every city's got to have one, right? So Frankie's got that slot, they got the license for being a steakhouse. So I think that kind of flexibility is huge. And then this year, you guys have had to be extremely flexible. We've had a couple guests on talk a little bit about what COVID's done for their business. We had somebody who I interviewed earlier this week who runs a bed and breakfast, a true bed and breakfast, not like an Airbnb. And, she was just like, good God, we never got closed down, but people just weren't traveling. So what do we do? Right. So talk a little bit about what's that journey been like for you guys this year? The timeline was really weird. And, I'd love to hear kind of how you guys have weathered it and what it's made in terms of changes for you.
It's still, at this point, we're still probably 75% to go food, which is great because that's enough to keep the doors open. But when you're trying to focus on selling wine, it's a little hard to sell glasses of wine when everybody's buying to-go food. So Our food sales are actually up a touch, but our alcohol sales are nearly non-existent. So when it comes to margins, that provides some challenges. At the beginning, it was chaotic. Right. Trying to learn how to just expand and change, and we added delivery in and eventually we went to a third-party delivery, but at first we were trying to deliver ourselves. The rules changing from week to week at the beginning.
Right.
At one point you're 25% and then you're closed, and then all of a sudden you can sell alcohol to go. And then it's back to back, you're constantly learning, you're constantly changing, trying to figure out, all this to go food, what we needed to have and what we needed to have prepped and how to prep it and how to even box food so it travels better. Everything was just, we were learning on the fly. Eventually at the height of COVID, when we were to go only, we went down, we only had 10 employees that stayed on. We gave all of our employees the option. I called every single one of them. If you are comfortable, we'd love to have you. If you're not comfortable, I understand if you choose to go on unemployment. So we individually had that talk, and we ended up with 10. And so 10 people to run a restaurant 7 days a week for 2 months was exhausting.
And how's that? And how many did you have before that? Like
27.
you had 20. So I mean, in a lot of places are running on less than half a crew. And I think, a thing that people on the outside, restaurant stuff is sexy. We've got all the great cooking shows on Netflix and you see all that. And what people don't really ever get a window into is the math. Yeah, so restaurants are very much run on the back of some pretty key numbers. One is my staffing pool large enough because of what you said? There's a lot of variability in people's availability. Two, I've got the overhead for my space. Right, that's the kiss of death of so many places. They're like, hey, I'm doing great with 20 tables. Let's expand to 60. And then it's like, then you're fucked. Sorry, NSFW there. But and then people dealing with food costs, and you really kind of hit all three of those at once
Yeah.
with COVID, right? So how did
Right.
you manage that? I mean, food costs got different too, didn't they?
Well, and food costs got different. Some food costs spiked gigantically.
Right.
Crab meat was one thing that just went up. Steaks went up for a while. There was a panic where the pork processing facilities shut down, so we couldn't get pork for our pork chops. Like, there was a lot
Right.
of weird things on that. But fortunately, we were able. So we do a lot of things very locally.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to avoid some of the national, like, obviously we don't get like local crab meat because we're not getting that out of the river. But
I don't want it.
Yeah, right. So we have a local farmer that we get our eggs from. We have a local farmer that literally could walk a cow over here that we get steaks and burger from.
Right.
We have our own greenhouse. We grow our own salad greens. So when there was the panic over romaine and all this, like, oh, we're fine because we grow our own stuff. It's not part of that. So we're able to avoid some of that. But yes, food costs did go up. Our overhead for the space went up. Last year, we expanded the restaurant to open our event space.
Mm-hmm.
Hugely successful, going wonderfully. Suddenly, we're not allowed to have events anymore. So now we just have this event space that I'm sitting in to talk to you, and I store some wine back here, and I occasionally come back here and cry, and that's about what it's here for. So that changed, and just poorly timed with that. Going into right now, December. Last year, we only had 5 days for the whole month where we did not have a Christmas party back here. At the moment, we have 2 booked for the whole month of December.
Wow. Yeah.
So, that we have those huge changes. Staffing changes were challenging, and staffing is still challenging because we have to be so tight in a restaurant in public whenever anybody is exposed. Getting employees to quarantine properly and to contact trace. And we've made it very clear with our employees, we want them to be honest. And so if they are put in contact and they have to quarantine, we're going to pay them.
Right.
You don't qualify for unemployment for your 7-day quarantine, but we understand these people have to feed themselves. They have to live.
Yeah.
So the challenge of that, of making sure that the employees feel comfortable being honest in a society where you're kind of trained not to be honest when you're sick, has been a bit of a challenge as well. We had a 15-day period where we had to close both Tazzoni and Tap House. We had 3 total employees test positive at the same time, which qualified us being a hotspot,
right,
which gave us a mandatory shutdown. So 15 days, no income from both restaurants, was hard. And then having to take care of your employees and, things that people, no revenue for 15 days is hard enough, but the amount of food waste,
right,
that we got shut down on a Monday after we'd gotten 2 food trucks. So all of a sudden we have just incredible amount of stuff. We did the best we could to break it up and give all of our employees to-go packages of food so they had something to eat, something to work with during the week. The stuff that both the Radford and Blacksburg restaurants use, we ship to them, but we don't have similar menus, so there's only so much you can do with that. So it's weird that you take losses in places that people don't realize you're taking losses.
Right. Yeah. Well, and was there ever a point where you guys collectively said, "Hey, do we want to keep doing this, or do we just shut it down?" Or, I mean, that's a lot. You guys have gone through a lot,
We've been through a lot, but we've the goal has just been to keep the doors open.
Right.
It's been challenging, and we've taken our losses. And you talked about earlier, part of this, what we're talking about is how do you make money? Right now, we don't.
Right.
We just don't.
Right.
But if we keep the doors open and we have our doors open whenever this ends, we've won the war.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. Just keep trucking through and keep going. And and one of the things that we always do is we kind of pride ourselves on how in touch we are with the community and things we do with the community. And that's been a part of the big driving force in this, is to stay in touch with the community and show that we're still here and show that we're still part of it, because we do lots of community fundraisers and are very, very involved. And because of that, we get people that are very loyal to us, and we want to keep those relationships going. And fears if we do shut the door, some of those relationships will be severed.
Right. No, I hear you. Well, what happens in terms of the restaurant business? You're really and this is the same, like if you run a taco truck you're making your money basically on the velocity of the number of people you can put through the window. We call them covers, right?
Right.
Um,
Yep.
and when you look at that and you go, okay, I want to do X number of covers, which loosely will translate to a meal, or a person meal. When you guys make the shift from indoor dining and very little, if any, takeout, right? Your takeout was all doggy bag takeout, right? Leftovers,
Right.
after meals.
Yeah.
When you make that shift, what happens to the production and the kind of the model that you use to decide, okay, what's my menu going to be like? How am I going to produce this? What's my line look like? What was that shift like for you, and what happens when you make that change?
It took a lot of, we had spent a lot of time studying what we had on the menu and figuring out what had ingredients that weren't shared with other dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big thing, was finding ingredients that we could have that are, okay, we need this because it's in like 3 or 4 different dishes. One of our most popular dishes before all this was our lobster ravioli. But we realized, okay, we're getting several things that are used only in this and
Right.
nothing else. And if that's not used, that's a waste that we can't, make up. So going through and picking these things was very challenging. And on top of that, understanding how to make a schedule to figure out, strangely enough, packing up to-go stuff is more labor intensive
Then plating.
than plating.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oh, I had no idea.
And
Interesting.
because you have to put so many different like salsas on the side and a to-go ramekin of this and foil
Right.
here, and if most of the time people ordered courses when it's with us, so you gotta box up a salad and then box up an entree, then box up your sides, then box up a dessert, and by the time you've done all that, it's taken longer than just putting it on a plate would have.
Right.
So it became a little interesting learning new roles for
Mhm.
everybody, how it goes, how to put it on the schedule. Our staff now is incredibly cross trained. Pretty much everybody can bounce and do things. From I'm sitting here now talking to you. I'll do a wine order. Probably in a little bit, I'll go make some pizzas on the line, maybe run saute, maybe host a little bit, end up in the dish pit by the end of the night. And most of our employees have kind of figured out how to do that,
Mhm.
which is incredibly useful. Kitchen employees particularly can work. Now all of them can work every single spot in the kitchen because that's the way we've had to be. And so putting systems in place to be able to do that and be able to have people just able to fill in and step in. And we've done a lot of work where we have recipe cards and journals and books where it's all communicated and very easily communicated
Right.
from person to person. So that way people can just jump from place to place, from shift to shift. Little things too, like our servers, pretty much every server we have can now either work our salad station or dessert station.
Oh,
Just because
interesting.
that's what they learned to do, just pack the stuff up to go. So
Right.
yeah, having people that are cross-trained and so willing to learn to do multiple things in the restaurant has helped with that greatly, because there was a point where we just didn't have enough people to fill all those positions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how our team, our staff is very willing to learn new things, to make sure that they are involved and are just invested in being here. We always joke a little bit. I think we might have the most educated staff in any restaurant I've ever worked in. It's,
I
just-
don't
yeah.
disagree. I think
Yeah.
I think in good shops, in good places, whether it's been a restaurant or any other business, I think that for small businesses in particular, the ones that have hung on, a lot of them have seen, what I would call a much greater. I don't want to say teamwork because that phrase gets used all the time, but
Yeah.
a sense of everybody being on the team. And
Yeah.
hey, we're going to get through this. We're going to figure this out. And I think it makes a big statement, especially in our country and especially in food service, where you say, hey man, if you're feeling sick, go home. I mean, that is not
Yep.
those are not words that have come out of many
No.
a kitchen ever,
Right.
and,
No.
and to say, hey, and we're going to pay you for this quarantine, that's a big commitment. And then, the big ask that says, hey, I'm going to ask everybody to be cross-trained and to treat this, like it's your restaurant. I think that makes people step up,
It does. And, it just people are invested. And when you encourage them to be honest and be part of it, it's way easier. There's a much bigger sense of trust through and through this restaurant than anyone I've ever worked in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying that the educated thing, I think of the 24 employees we have on now, there are only 2 that either don't have a college degree or aren't working on it.
Wow.
And, am I going to use my history degree in this restaurant ever? No, I'm not. But I did learn things about being organized and about communicating and about just work ethic. And I think the communication skills that people learn in college are very useful in a place where you're trying to work fast paced. We communicate very well as a staff, whether it be, just passing on, teaching someone how to do the next thing, or, if I screw something up, no one has a problem telling me that, hey, Brandon, you screwed that up. And I went, okay, yes, I did. How do I make it better?
Right.
And so that's unique for a restaurant. Most of the time, it's, lots of people are fending for themselves and trying to scrap for every tip dollar they can. And it's a different ship here all of a sudden. And that's changed over the course of COVID and gotten much stronger. So I don't know how much of that is just having the right people, or how much of that is just everybody really does feel like a team because we've been struggling through the same struggles.
Right.
Yeah. But it's, the team at the moment is as strong of a restaurant team I've ever worked for. And so I'm very, very thankful for that, because otherwise some of these days would have been miserable.
Oh God, I can only imagine. And back up, this is again, I kind of try to think of, like, what are these things that to us seem perfectly understandable? Explain why you go through your ingredients list and go, hey, I can't be having stuff that's only used in one dish. Why is it so important to have a single ingredient be used in 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 dishes?
So I can buy it in bulk.
Right.
Yeah. If I'm buying just, one little thing of oysters or one little thing of crab, and I have to pay a much higher premium price, where instead, if I can order a case of something that we're going to use in several dishes, it makes a big difference on the per pound price of things. I was talking about crab meat earlier. Crab meat went up almost $4 a pound. And if I was ordering it just by the single 1 pound case, it would have been almost $7 a pound. So, just learning how to use things in multiple places, being able to get that bulk discount. That's the restaurant's fine line, is you are buying stuff cheaper than grocery store prices when you're buying it in bulk. When you're buying single containers, you're basically paying grocery store prices.
Right.
And so suddenly that greatly affects, it affects your bottom line, but it affects, what you can charge your guest and how to do things. And then when you add in waste on top of that, it gets ugly real quick. So that was a lot of research and homework there.
Yeah, and you have, once an ingredient gets into the shop, it's starting to die, right? You have a limited shelf life for that, so you got to use it, and also, you end up paying $7 a pound for crab, let's say. Yeah. You can't really turn around and pass that on to a diner easily, because there is a limit, by market and by cuisine type to what people will pay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. If I'm selling you a crab cake sandwich for $12, cool, that makes sense. If I'm selling you a crab cake sandwich for $24, I'm not buying that.
That'd be a hell of a sandwich. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Same crab, higher cost. You can't. That's a really tough. That's a tough tagline. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think a thing that is especially challenging about about food as a hospitality industry in particular is there are so many parts, and we kind of touched on that when you talk about, hey, wow, I know how long it takes to plate this dish. I've trained everybody to plate this dish. Now I got to convert this dish into a to-go, and it still has to be aesthetically pleasant.
Right.
And it still has to be easy for the customer to unpack at home. Yep. And I have to think about, okay, how long is it going to take them to get home? What's it going to be like? Gretchen and I, my wife and I live, we live on the other end of the county, and, we aren't, like, there are not a lot of restaurants out here our way that, where we tend to eat a lot. And ironically, the restaurant that's closest to us would be Asia 2 for sushi, that we will get takeout from. And interestingly, we just resigned ourselves. It was like, okay, well, if we're going to get takeout from down home, that's 15, 17, 20-minute drive. It's just going to be cold. Okay, I'm fine with that. But as the restaurateur, you're like, oh my God, no, that we can't have that. So there's a lot of moving parts, I think, that make that successful. Ditto, you're thinking about the math of your food costs. Mm-hmm. You're thinking about your coverage. When the restaurant's open, you've got front of house. What does it look like? What's the experience when they dine? How do I keep this place clean all night? All that stuff. I mean, it is a terrifically complicated organism, and we never see that when it's done well.
Right. Yeah. All the extra steps. If you're doing it properly, you don't notice the extra steps. We have to clean the door for repeated. Just the door itself, we have to clean repeatedly. The restrooms have to be cleaned more times during the night. The tables, the chairs. There's much more cleaning now than there was that, which requires more hands-on labor. But if you do it very quickly, no one notices it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's big. You're talking about the to-go thing. One of the things that was bigger challenge is learning, particularly things that have sauces on them. Some things, you can put a sauce on and let it ride for 15 minutes, and sometimes it's even better. Sometimes you put a sauce on something, and by the time someone gets it home, oh man, your sea bass is now a pile of mush.
Right.
So yeah, that was a little trial and error too, to figure out just individual dishes, which way they were best packaged. And some of it was more labor intensive. Some of it was like, once we did it a couple times, like, oh yeah, we're idiots. We should have done that the entire time we've been open. Why didn't we think about that?
Wow.
So yeah, so some of the stuff that we've learned have actually helped people dining in as well, just better way to present things. But yeah, we're still constantly learning. And as we change our menu, we add new items every couple of weeks. We have some rotating specials, and so there's still a little trial and error with everything.
Right. Well, so you've talked about the new thing you guys are looking on downtown. What, assuming we get out of this nonsense in the next few months, tell me, what are you excited about coming up in 2021 other than simply getting back to normal? Is there something you're super stoked about? What do you got in the works?
Getting the downtown thing, the idea is coffee shop juices, prepackaged salads and lunches, where we'll be using vegetables, greens that we're growing in our own greenhouse and being able to introduce those to a market outside of here in Daleville, because the stuff we're growing is really, really good. It's just, It's fresh. It's harvested daily. It's very cool. So I'm excited to be able to just put that out there a little more. I'm excited to get back to wine dinners.
Right.
Man, that's one of my favorite things that we do here is, in the private event space, we'll have these 5-course wine dinners. And we've done a couple of them since COVID started, but we did a couple of them via Zoom, take home.
Okay.
And we've done 2 here in-house. We did one, I guess it's been 3 weeks ago, where actually we used wines from Arizona, which
interesting. Okay.
Correct face. I was simply blown away by these 2 vineyards in Arizona when I was out there visiting a couple months ago, and decided I want to do an Arizona wine dinner. And we did it, and it was hugely successful, but I think people were just dying to get out of their homes and do something.
Right.
And we did it was 5 wines, 5 courses of food, $75 at tables, socially distanced, everybody, just very, very strict with your mask, going to your seat, all that stuff. But it was fun and people enjoyed it, but it still just didn't feel the same. So I want to do those where we can have winemakers come in again, where we can have the reps from the companies come in and really get deep into the wine knowledge, being able to move from table to table to talk about the wine, to score the wine, to learn the wine. I miss that more than anything else. So that's what I'm hoping to get back into a bit more. So the downtown thing and just more wine events is what I'm going for here.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things about this year, and I am going purely on the basis of just what I see in my email. I'm on a bunch of vineyard lists. I have not seen big names, like Farniente. And for, those listening who are not, Farniente is pretty well-known high-end winemaker out in California. They're emailing their list with this like, hey, we've got a club. And you kind of go, what? These hard to, holy crow, And I think, the day that Sine Qua Non says they've got a club, then I'll know the apocalypse has come. But, it's been interesting, and Gretchen and I have talked about it quite a bit too, is that one of the things that, to me, outside of any government enforced lockdowns, if you will, right, there were never restrictions on air travel. And the airline industry just cratered, and part of that was just because of tourism, and the other part was business travel. And everybody said, "Why are we going through this?" And and then I'm going to have employees get sick, and at the same time, on the food front and the entertainment and socializing front, to see how quickly all of that can just be taken away from you, really, it really makes you sit down and think, wow, I don't think I want to have a lot of wasted dinners out in the world anymore. I'm going to go enjoy myself, and that's a thing. Yeah, right? And so I think that's given a lot of people cause for a lot of thought, and to kind of see you guys concentrating on, okay, well, we're going to open up a new concept in Roanoke so we can bring some of that more experiential stuff downtown. And for people who aren't listening, so Brandon's place is out. What is Daleville? 7-8 miles outside of Roanoke proper, something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's really a suburb, if you will, of Roanoke, although it's growing, so it's got its own stuff going on. And then downtown, our Metro MSA is what, about 300,000 now, 330,000.
That's about right.
So and I think the downtown, obviously, the kind of renaissance, if you will, of people moving back downtown, and the restaurant and dining scene improving, got hit pretty hard by this. But we're seeing more, I think, really neat ideas. We've seen an explosion of the whole brew pub thing, which has been great for us. We were only 20 years late to that party. But I love the idea. There really isn't a juice, coffee, wine space. And we've got some coffee shops. Is there anybody doing a juice bar downtown? I don't think there is. Is there?
Yeah, not that I know of.
Yeah.
There was one on the corner of Campbell, but it went away.
Right. Yeah, it didn't survive. Yeah. So, I think that's outstanding, and it's cool to see what happens. So what do you think, given all the change that you've made now, you've had a lot go on in the back, how the house gets run. How's that going to change how you guys attack these projects for the restaurant group going forward? I mean, it sounds to me like you've learned a lot. And will you ever go back in a way? You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of things we won't. A lot of just the streamlining process, the communication processes we have. And I keep saying that are just wonderful. We've always had a thing where we have we use Dropbox, and every shift you leave a journal note so everybody can see what happened, what went well, what didn't went well, what you're out of. So we've had that forever and ever. But now we have all these different cards for training and cards for closing and cards for setup. Where just because it was so different at the beginning of COVID, if there wasn't a written list of things to do, you didn't know what to do.
Right.
So that's such a big thing that we've had them to some extent, but we've expanded them in so many ways. And just the ways that we order, the ways that we inventory have been adjusted. And no, I don't think we'll go back. I think we've learned a lot of very valuable lessons on how to do a lot of these things, and just kind of, we've cut out not just the waste of food and waste of ordering, but lots of things that were a waste of time.
Right.
Time management has been incredibly important, making the most out of what you got here, because you have so many things to do when we were so short staffed. So that's something that we've all learned that will help greatly moving forward.
Wow. And it's probably going to, your hiring process is going to be super interesting now too.
Right.
Right. Because you've now determined that having a staff that's overeducated and talks too much is a good thing. Yes. Right? Pretty much, I think right. We got that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting going forward. And I know, and my youngest Jack, who's, worked in the industry for a while he was in school, he has a real different, but here's the kid who's a whatever cum laude graduate of UVA, he looks at a kitchen from a real different viewpoint. Right. And it's interesting to hear you echo some of those things where it's like, oh yeah, what do I have to learn here as a line cook? What am I going to learn? Am I going to work all the stations? Am I going to have these opportunities? What's the level of communication? Are priorities clear? And all of that stuff, when you say it, is like, well, of course, it makes it's like, but that's not how the industry works. And the industry's very successful without working that way. So it's cool in a way to at least see some of the good that comes out of this disaster be, wow, boy, we've got some practices that make us pretty resilient.
Yeah.
And it's got to have a great impact on your ability to turn a profit as you open new locations.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Right.
Certainly hope so. And it's funny, a lot of people have used, their time in quarantine, a lot of our employees anyway, to do things to better themselves. There's several people that signed up for different classes, that have done different courses. That we had one girl who decided that she wanted to start working on her PhD. So she started some PhD work. We've had, several people decide to take some culinary courses that were extra. I passed my level 2 sommelier.
Oh, no kidding.
Finished my level 2.
Wow.
This. Yeah.
I'm not bringing any more wine to dinners with you.
The only one, strangely enough, one of our employees that didn't come back, one of our line cooks who actually had some kind of a master's in philosophy. But he was a line cook with a master's in philosophy, very into Karl Marx. When this started and he could live off the government, he's like, "Oh, this is my shit. I'm not coming back. I'm out."
I've reached my jam. I love it. Oh, jeez. Wow.
So he's one of the 3 that didn't come back. And, it's funny. It's a different group here.
And there you have it, kids. A master's in philosophy. We know where it gets you. So, oh my God, that's funny. Full disclosure, everybody, I have a PhD in philosophy, so it's even worse once you get to that level. Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, and watching the team do that. So tell me, I did not know that you guys were running your own greenhouse. How did that get started? And like, who does that? How big is it? Like, what's in it? I want to hear all about that. That sounds cool.
It's a hydroponic greenhouse. We've always been trying to buy as many local things as possible. And there was a gentleman who had a hydroponic greenhouse here who approached us one day. He's like, "Hey, I'm growing this and this." And at this point, he had just basically mixed greens and romaine.
Okay.
He's like, "Would you guys want to use local mixed greens and romaine for your salads?" And we started doing it, and they were delicious. And we keep wanting more and more, and we wanted it for all the restaurants. And he basically came back to us and said, "Hey, I can't keep up. I don't know what to do." And so we said, "Okay, well, we know what to do." And so we bought it. We just bought the whole farm.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so one of our kitchen managers, who has worked in Radford for a long time and then was working at Tap House, he's now a farmer.
Okay.
And that's what he does. Shannon Cox, the number 2 on our ownership group, goes on there and helps works things out, set things up. Several other people just volunteer. Lots of the kitchen guys will work a shift at the greenhouse once a week. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of pride in, hey, I'm serving the stuff that I grew, the stuff that I harvested. So
and it makes a difference. I mean, you can
Absolutely.
taste it. Yeah.
So we grow all of our salad greens. Our arugula, the arugula is my favorite. It has this just beautiful, crisp, peppery taste to it. We grow strawberries down there. We have herbs, basil, cilantro, crazy salads during the summer with that fresh basil that we harvested in the morning. Just delicious and on point. Tomatoes are in right now, so it's a pretty good size hydroponic greenhouse that we're just turning stuff out.
That's crazy. I love it. And I think that's beginning to be more, I mean, everybody talks about the whole farm to table, but the ability to manage the logistics of that has really improved, I think, in the last several years. And you've got people like, when Jack was up in Charlottesville, he was always pushing the kitchen up at Oakhart. Hey, let's get stuff from Polyface. And the guy who ran the shop there was like, "Dude, I can get stuff that is literally a third of the distance from Polyface here," right? I mean, and for people, Polyface is about an hour and a half from Charlottesville, So it was one of these things where that ability, and now the kind of grow your own, that's a huge step that I think makes a lot of sense because it changes the quality of your product. You've got such control over your supply. Mm-hmm. You know exactly when the truck is going to be here, so to speak. Right? There's a lot of benefits that come with doing that, and it just sounds cool.
Literally, it's not just farm to table; it's our farm to our table,
right?
Which is cool. But every morning our prep guy gets here at 6 a.m., starts prepping for the day, does an inventory, sends a text message to the guy at the farm, and the guy shows up with what we need for the day daily.
Wow.
It's the best way to order because it's fresh and it's pulled and it's there. And sometimes we'll have a little bit too much of something. Basil, it's always basil. We always have too much basil, where we have to end up, okay, well, let's make a bunch of pesto and sell it.
Right. Yeah. There are worse fates. Yeah.
Right. So that's cool. And also here in our parking lot on Saturdays is the local Botetourt County Farmers Market.
Oh, okay.
So we're able to connect with lots of farmers that way. Martin's Farms is a place where we get our beef and our eggs, and we've started a little co-op with him where he now sells his products online, and we'll come and put them in our freezer, our walk-in freezer here, and people can come pick up his meat on Fridays. So he doesn't have to have people come to his farm, and then we get meat and eggs from him as well. So we're trying to be more and more involved with the local things. The farmers market, Saturday morning, we can walk out in the farmers market, pick out some things, and hey, that's our special. Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing for dinner.
I think in the food world, especially, well, I'm sorry, I was going to say in the marketing of it, but also in the kitchens, I think people got into this whole like, ooh, farm to table, and really, in a way got a little twee about it.
Hmm.
It's kind of like everybody discovered you could eat flowers, so now every dish I had fucking flour on it. But, again, sorry, my language.
Yeah,
But,
it's me.
it is you. But really, for the kind of stuff that you guys are doing, you've got 4 restaurants to supply in a reasonably, within a 50-mile, radius of each other.
Right.
And on top of that, given the kind of food you're doing, it seems pretty logical. Oh, I want to reach out to local sources because I've got the ability to manage quality control. I've got
Right.
the ability to know how fresh things are,
Hmm.
and I don't have to call up Cisco and be like, so how we doing on radishes? I mean,
Right.
I call somebody and they're like, I got 3 bushels. How many do you want? So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of economic sense to that is a fairly recent development.
Yeah. And
And
for a place like us, it makes a lot of sense. People expect farm to table, but like Tap House, it's a burger and bar
right,
joint. You can
right,
get a burger everywhere, but there you can get a burger that's grass fed from 3 miles down the road.
yeah,
It's different. It tastes different. It's cleaner. It's
yep.
there is a huge difference in that people appreciate, or most people appreciate.
And nowadays the cost isn't that different. I was seeing
No.
farm meat at the co-op is the same as regular old Prime at Kroger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
It's not much difference at all.
Yeah, which is stunning to me.
Wow.
So really a time to make that work. Hey, but I know you've got stuff going on. We have 2 utterly crucial and important questions that we
Okay.
ask every podcast guest.
All right.
So this is it. All the money, all the marbles.
All right. $1 million question.
You'll be remembered forever by your
Yeah.
answers to these. Forever. Number 1, if you could have a meal with any living public figure, who would it be and what would the meal be?
All right. So, because I'm me, I'm going to cheat on this.
There's a shocker.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a 2-part answer.
All right.
The person who I've always wanted to have a meal with, because it's who I've always wanted to be when I grow up, is Anthony Bourdain. But damn it, he's not living, so therefore that's going to be my pick, is Anthony Bourdain.
And that's fair. We all miss him. We miss him.
Yeah. That's who I always wanted to be. And what would I have if I was eating with him? A lot of damn beers, what I have, and some whiskey. And we'll figure out the rest.
There you go.
To pick a living person, and this is actually a recent thing. I told you earlier about how I went to Arizona
Yeah.
and found some wines that I fell in love with. Well, the 2 wineries were it's Caduceus and Merkin
Okay.
were the 2 wineries, and the winemaker there is Maynard James Keenan, the singer from Tool and A Perfect Circle. And
Get out.
yeah, he owns the wineries. He is the winemaker. He has his own farm where he farms all the stuff that goes into the food in their restaurants. And this is just what he does now. And so the wines blew me away. The story was that his great-grandparents were winemakers in Italy. That was what he wanted to do later in life, was be a winemaker too. He went to Italy. He found the property that used to be his great-grandparents. It was like, houses falling down, but there were still some
Right.
grapes growing. He grafted some of the vines, brought them to Arizona, and replicated the climate in the desert of Arizona, and made these phenomenal wines. So I tasted it, thought it was cool, and then, I always listened to Tool a little bit. I wasn't like a huge Tool fan.
Right.
I'd go through like late night wormhole of Tool videos on YouTube.
Right.
But then I read about his processes and his passion for wine and just his philosophy on it, and watched this. He had this little documentary on YouTube. It was like a 4-part series, and it was about just his philosophy in returning to the old ways of food and wine, and just the passion in it, and just, it was the coolest thing. So I would love to sit down with him and drink his wine and eat his food, and have him just tell me his processes and his thoughts in person. I think that would be an incredible meal. I wouldn't even ask about music. I would just
Wow.
go through just his food and wine stuff, because those little bits of the videos were just incredible. And the wine is so beautifully old world that you put that in a glass in front of either one of us, and not only of course we would never say Arizona,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I would never say they were American wines. It's these elegant layered wines that just kind of blew me away. So that's my answer of the month. First
Man.
answer is Anthony Bourdain, since that doesn't count. answer of the month is Maynard James Keenan. Next month, it'll probably change again.
Well, I think there's, to me, there's this value in having people who you aspire to be or to meet or to learn from, and that changes, right, depending on what you're doing and where you're going. But to just take a moment and be like, yeah, this is what I'd love to do. I love the answers we get. I had no idea. I mean, you just learn stuff about people all day. Hey, oh, lead singer Tool, yeah, he's making old world Italian wines in Arizona. You're like, what?
Right.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And then the other question. Now, I know that probably your first answer to this question, the question is, if somebody's just starting out in business, no matter what business, one piece of advice would you give? I know that many of us who have been in business for ourselves for a long time, our piece of advice is, geez, don't do it. You have no idea what you're doing. Right. But other than that, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's starting out on their own, regardless of what it is they're doing?
I personally wish I would have documented what I was doing a little bit better. Now I try to constantly take notes on things that really worked or things that don't work, and try to just keep, it's almost like a personal journal of business, so I can kind of refer back to it. And I wish I would have done that, not just in my restaurant experience earlier on, but with just some of my life experience in this variety of businesses, things that were high points, things that were low points, so I can refer back to them. So when something works or doesn't work, I can kind of have a reference to go back. So that's one of the things, is that I wish I would have done a better job of recording things, so those experiences, I could refer back to my experiences other than just the foggy memories I have.
Right. No, I hear you.
So I'm pleased with where I ended up, but I wish I would have documented things a little better. And I think that's a valuable thing that people used to do a lot more intensely. People still do it now, but it's through the form of social media. Mm-hmm. People can look back at their memories on Facebook or whatever and kind of get a little idea, but none of that is real.
Right.
You get the Facebook version of the event, which is always the happier presentation or the extremely dramatic presentation of whatever the hell you're doing. Mm-hmm. Whereas, people used to keep diaries and journals and logs of things that, man, that's really useful in the business world. It's extremely useful, not just to know what you did, but to know how you felt about it while you're doing it. So that's the advice I would give is, man, don't give yourself just the fake social media version. Give yourself a real version of what you're doing and what you got out of it, because that reference is valuable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there are a couple of industries or activities, if you will. Chefs, people who are into food, have a notebook, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you do, our whole pig roast thing we do every year, I've got a notebook on that. That one event that gets repeated, and then, what works, what doesn't, we talk about it, those of us who kind of do the production of it, we plan about it. And I think, that's been a fairly popular thing. And ditto, you talk about logs, if you fly or you sail, you keep a log,
right.
And it's usually pretty boring, right. 8:30 p.m. change course 2 points east. It's like, oh boy, that's exciting. Yeah. But but you do learn stuff by, like you say, the kind of big events in there. I think that's really great advice. And to me, that's different advice than saying, everybody's like, oh, document your processes, which you should. But there's a little bit of a difference between documenting my process and then updating that document versus, recording and writing down what's happening. Right. I'm making a decision. Yeah. Why did I make that decision? What drove me, to do that? And it's weirdly simple stuff. We were doing updates to a client's ad budget this week, and one of our team members was like, "Why is there a yellow coded row on this spreadsheet? And what do these letters mean?" And I literally was like, "Who made this spreadsheet?" And the answer was, "You did." And it took me some reconstructing to figure out what in the world, but so that habit, I think that's really smart. And I agree with you. There's so much to be said for going back and rereading, not just as an exercise in nostalgia, but as an exercise in, okay, what have I learned? Right. And how can I be better? I think that's a really, that is an unusual answer that should be a lot more usual than it is.
Yeah, right. And it's, it is, like I said, it's some industries, it's a normal thing, and most it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And, details as to, what's right, what's wrong, but even like your morale while doing it. Like,
Right.
there's important details that even if you write that down, you're like, oh, I didn't do this because it really sucked, or
Right.
whatever it is, it's such a useful thing moving forward. And man, I wish I'd been doing that for way longer.
Yeah.
Way longer.
No, I hear you. I love it. I think that's absolutely on point and a good thing for people to understand and do, especially as we talked earlier about the idea of a concept. Writing down your thinking behind an idea, whether it's a product or a service that you want to offer the market, and go, why do I think people want to buy this? And then it allows you, right? The market is just what it is. It's neither good nor bad. It's neither stupid nor smart. It just is what it is, and your ability to adapt to it is good or bad and stupid or smart. And
Right.
and I think having a document that says here was my rationale, here were the reasons, and then when the market says no, you can go back and go, okay, well, which one of these reasons was faulty?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, then your response is just go, oh, Roanoke's just not ready for it. Or whatever that means. I hear that all the time. Just weren't ready. That's like, well, nobody's ready for it because it's dumb. So yeah, I like that. That's a great answer. And hey, I know for you, time is certainly money, and gets more expensive by the day. So I will let you go again. Brandon Linthicum of TazzoniWineBar.com. Check him out. And you guys are open, we hope, given what we don't know what the governor's going to say today. But you're open for dine-in, takeout. I can attest is banging. You have, how much trouble am I going to get in for saying this? I'm pretty sure you have the best wine list in town.
Oh, thank you. We've got 350 different wines at the moment,
I'm pretty sure
we might
you
have the broadest, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think you've got the best. And I'll say there's some people who have some of those what I would call kind of marquee, like, oh, we've got Opus or whatever, Camus, Opus, that kind of thing, which is great, and they're wonderful wines. But you guys have a list that is very broad, but it's just super high quality. So great wine list, and your retail stuff is good. I didn't know you'd gone into the whiskey game. I need to not come up. And then you guys are doing offsite catering, so you've got all that going. Definitely encourage people to check you out, and thank you for coming on the show, my friend.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. You can find contact information about our guest in the show notes for this episode. This has been the How I Make Money podcast by Brand Distillers. To learn more, visit branddistillers.com.